We're still a few days away from the Dutch Grand Prix starting, but that doesn't mean that we can't look at some early team selection. So let's check it out. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Tuesday, August 20th. My name is Ewan, and on today's episode, we're going to look at some early team selection for the Dutch Grand Prix that starts in about 3 days' time. If you haven't checked out yesterday's episode, it was a summer break recap, kind of Belgian Grand Prix refresh kind of thing, just to let us know where we are at in the F1 fantasy world coming out of a 3-4 kind of week break here. And today we'll go over some early team selection. Tomorrow will be green flag, yellow flag, red flag, which is kind of my version of buy, sell, hold in the F1 fantasy world. And then Thursday will be the big race preview and kind of the final thoughts on the team selection process. But also on Saturday, there will be a deadline live stream. So please join me for that on Saturday around 2 p.m. Central European time, 1 p.m. UK, 8 a.m. UK or US Eastern, and we will be going over all of the conundrums before the deadline lock for the Dutch Grand Prix. We'll be going over the Friday data, any simulations that come out from F1 Fantasy Tools, from 11FI, FF Trout, all those fun places. So definitely join me on Saturday afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world, Saturday evening as well. And we will go over all of the F1 fantasy questions that we need to go over. But yeah, today is early team selection. So let's just get right into it here. Here is my squad, 119.5 million, 2 transfers going into the weekend. And the squad is in pretty rough shape here. Going into Belgium, I was really believing in the Max Verstappen kind of penalty hype with the engine penalty. So I've got Max, Yuki, Logan, Joe Guan Yu, Nico Hulkenberg, Red Bull Racing, and McLaren. 2 free transfers doesn't really get me out of anything here. I mean, if we kind of are out on Max and Red Bull again, I mean, I can go back to the Lando and Mercedes build, and that leaves me with 11.8 in the bank, which is fine. That's a lot of money to leave in the bank, but I would need to take a 10-point hit to kind of use that anywhere. I mean, it could get me out of the Logan business, out of the Joe Guan Yu business as well. So what I'm thinking this week, when I was kind of playing around with it before I started the episode, was I think it's going to be time for me to activate the wild card and just kind of hit the reset button coming out of the summer break. So I've got 4 chips left. I've used Limitless and I've used the No Negative that I used in Australia earlier this year. So with 10 races left, 10, 11 races left, it is time to start using the chips, and it just feels like a good time to start using them. I can totally reset my squad where I want it to be. It's not perfect that I was looking at it, so let me just break it down for you here. So I would definitely go with Mercedes and McLaren. That keeps me in the range of like a Ferrari build because McLaren is up there. So if Ferrari suddenly shows some improvement, I can hop on Ferrari quite easily just from McLaren to Ferrari. Mercedes are within reach of Ferrari as well. But for the drivers, I think this would be time to kind of a push for budget building. And also, it's not that big of a gap between Oscar and Lando and George and Lewis. I know recently Lewis has been smoking George, but both of those races are where George did not finish. So that's kind of my thinking there. So Oscar and George would get me there. I'd probably keep Nico, so I wouldn't need him to be my wild card. And then I could go Alexander Albon, who I really like. I really think the Williams is on the up. Albon's been driving okay. Just some couple DNF in Canada there that was not his fault. Got taken out by his soon-to-be teammate Carlos Sainz, but positive results moving forward here. He qualifies quite well. So as you can see here, 11th, 13th. Silverstone was 9th as well. And on F1 Fantasy HQ, Adam's preview this week, he was talking about how Zandvoort traditionally doesn't really have a lot of overtakes. Last year, it was a wet race, and early predictions or projections forecast are saying that we might be in for a wet race this weekend as well, but we'll kind of discuss that on Thursday because we'll be like a day or two away from actual race action on the track. So it'll be hopefully a more accurate forecast by then. But it could be kind of you want guys who qualify quite well because Zandvoort may be a tough track to kind of overtake on. So that's where I get Nico, Alexander Albon, and that would leave me 8 million. And it gets me to Valtteri Bottas. Now, ideally, I would be totally out of the Sauber and the Williams business, but that is the reality that my 119.5 million budget leaves me in. I'd be happy to get out of the Joe Guan Yu and Logan Sargent business. Valtteri Bottas has also been okay recently, 14th in Belgium, qualifying 12th in Hungary, 16th in Silverstone, 18th in Austria. So he's been better in the last couple of races before the summer break. It can't go much worse for Sauber in the second half of the season compared to the first, considering they did not score any points here. But what I want to talk about really with my thinking about like going with Oscar and Russell is that first of all, it gets me a lot of budget building because Lando can only go up 0.2. Lewis is only 0.9 away. George is 4.3 away from going to that tier A status. Oscar is only 1.4 away as well. But the thinking would be for the second half of the season that ride these assets until they become tier A assets, then drop down. So if Oscar becomes tier A, I can drop down to any of the Ferrari assets. If I can get over there, give me a second. Sorry. Yeah, so Charles Leclerc is right behind him. Carlos Sainz is right there as well. But if we go to F1 Fantasy Tools, if I can find my mouse and do this accurately, as we can see here, Piastri up here, Norris here, just go by average for the season. So Norris is ahead on average 25.6 to 23 for Piastri. But as you can see here, Piastri outscored him in Austria, barely lost in Britain, outscored him in Hungary, and outscored him in Belgium. So over the last 4 races, Piastri leads in F1 fantasy scoring 3-1. And in general, it's been pretty close between the McLarens here. As you can see, Lando had like storming weekends in Canada and Spain. But recently, since the last 4 races before the summer break, Oscar was kind of getting a handle on Lando. And I really don't think there's that much of a difference. I don't think there is, let's see here. Lando is 2.7 million more than Oscar. I definitely don't think there's that much of a difference between the two drivers. So I'm happy to go with Oscar. Going without Max and Lando is a little bit scary, but this is kind of where I would be at with my 119.5 million budget. However, I know a lot of you have a lot more than my $119.5 million budget for your F1 fantasy team. So this is my third team here, 126.5 million in the bank here. And yeah, I kind of did the same mistake as my T1 team that I did in Belgium here. Max, Nico, Pierre, Yuki Tsunoda, Alexander Albon, Red Bull, and McLaren. This team is currently top 500 in the world, which would be very nice considering I'm just on the outside of the top 6K right now with my T1 team. But this could also be a wild card candidate, just depending on the data. This is Tuesday, early team selection. Like I said, Tuesday, August 20th. We don't have racing for 3 more days. So we'll figure out more as the week goes along with the data and all that fun stuff. But don't really like the balance of this team either. The reason I would use a wild card on this team would be because right now I can get Lando and I bring in Mercedes. And that would give me 12.5 million in the bank. And I can get from the Alpine driver, Pierre Gasly, up to George Russell with 1.4 million left to spare. So not bad at all. I could upgrade Albon as well, Yuki. I could upgrade any of these drivers to George Russell, but I think I prefer Nico, Yuki, and Alex here as my 3 kind of C tier drivers. So Mercedes, McLaren, it would be 3 transfers here, which is maybe worth a 10-point hit just to save the wild card, but it does feel like as the season goes later and later, the wild card gets less and less effective. So maybe just saving 10 points would be worth it. I could make some bigger changes here. Let's see. I haven't really looked at what I could get with a Red Bull build here. So I could go Lando 26. That would leave me with 15-ish million. I couldn't really go anywhere else. I mean, even if I put in Logan here, um, still leaves me with 21.9, which could get me to George as well, but I don't really like the balance of that team as well. Relying on Red Bull, relying on Sergio Perez as well doesn't really fill me with confidence. So while it would be two of the highest scoring constructors up here, it would be two of the four options to go with constructors. I don't think we're really considering anyone else right now, like Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull. Those are the four kind of options you should be going with. These two are going to grow the least in budget. So if that's not a concern, which I guess it's not that much of a concern for this team here. But if we look at the constructors here, it's been getting pretty close here. I mean, as you can see, Mercedes, like 50s, 42, 69 for Red Bull. So they led the field in Belgium, but then they were fourth in Hungary, second in Silverstone, and third in Austria. So it's really been up and down amongst these four constructors. So Red Bull's really not offering a ton of like value for money there, just being the most expensive asset in the game. So I'm not really a huge fan there. So this can like leave me to stay out of the Logan Sargent business, which I would really like to do. I can go with Mercedes. Like once again, it keeps me kind of in the realm of getting to Ferrari. 28 million here with Logan Sargent is fine. I guess if I wanted to go triple McLaren, I could get there and bring in Pierre Gasly if I wanted to, which is another thought. That would be still a wild card. That would be three transfers. Uh, 10-point hit or a wild card. What would you guys do? Let me know in the comments below. Take a 10-point hit or activate the wild card. Ideally, you'd like to use the wild card for like a 20-point hit or 30-point hit, obviously, like I would be doing with my T1 team. But that is kind of where I'm at in the world and just kind of thinking about my T1 and T3 team. T2 team is a little bit of a disaster. Going to plug that into the Zandvoort to Abu Dhabi League that F1 Fantasy just announced. So definitely join that league if you've got a kind of experimental team that has a lot of chips left. Maybe you can make some strides in that league over the second half of the season. But that is going to do it for this very short and sweet early team selection video. Trying to do 4 episodes this week, so don't want to make every episode like 20 minutes or whatever. Once again, just reminding you, deadline live stream, Dutch Grand Prix before the deadline, 1 hour before the deadline. Come and hang out with me and we can discuss all of your F1 fantasy questions, conundrums, thoughts, concerns, all those fun stuff. But yeah, that's going to do it. Tomorrow will be green flag, yellow flag, red flag. Getting out the summer break, I was pretty rusty in yesterday's episode, so hopefully I am getting my titles back in check here. But yeah, that'll do it for today's episode. Like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe on the audio side. Any constructive feedback is always welcome. Hit me up on X at F1UNFPL. And once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.